Hi everybody, it's Sheila from Designs by Baby Moon. And over in the Designs by Baby Moon group, we've been making friendship bracelets for the last few weeks. And I wanted to show you how you can customize or personalize your friendship bracelet design with motifs from Stitch Artist Level 3 or with lettering. And just making these is so much fun. We've had a lot of fun with them over in the Designs by Baby Moon group, and I thought everybody might like to try these. So let's go into my software. I've got it up on the screen, and I want to show you how to use some of the controls in the software to add designs or lettering to these little bracelets so you can make exactly what you want to make. Okay, so let's go into the software. Okay, I have Stitch Artist Level 3 by Embrilliance, and I have pulled up on my screen several different friendship bracelets. These are all basically a generic blank friendship bracelet that I've simply added motifs to. I have switched some things around on it so that the edging runs the way I want it, but basically what I have on the screen are 5 bracelets that I've added different motifs to. So over in another tab, I have a single bracelet that already has a motif added to it. You can see that there's 2 color stops down here in the properties box and 5 steps to this bracelet. There's the loop at the top, the lace fill, and then the loop at the bottom. That is the background structure of the bracelet. There is also a satin border that is necessary that finishes the edges of the bracelet. And before that satin border stitches, I have a motif applied from Stitch Artist Level 3 that is filling the space, but it's a very open fill. It's a single run, but it creates a pattern on top of background layer, which I think is really fun. And there are literally hundreds of ways that you could fill a shape with these motifs to get kind of a different effect, depending on what you're going for. So let's just explore some of these ways. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just grab the background and the outline border. Okay, so this file that has just the background and the outline border for you to play with is called the Designs by Baby Moon Friendship Bracelet Mod. In that file, you'll get the BE version so that you can modify it how you want to. And we're just going to talk about some different ways so you can do that. So the BE file lets you manipulate it in Stitch Artist Level 3 so that you can do what you want to do with this file and make your own kinds of friendship bracelets. There's all kinds of things we could do. So I think this is really fun, and I just wanted to show you some cool stuff. Okay. Let's take these parts. This is basically the mod. So let's copy these, open a new file. I have a 5x7 hoop shown on my screen because this file needs a 5x7 hoop. Yours may be oriented sideways, or it may be up and down vertically like this. But however it is on your machine, that's how you'll want to digitize it so that you kind of know what you're getting. So I'm going to paste that background and outline here. So this is how it just starts. So this is the 7-inch version. There's a 6-inch version and then a 5.5-inch version. I found that that fits a wide range of sizes of wrists. And then I'm simply using mask elastic to tie them together. Simple, easy, fun. And you could dress it up with some chains, bracelet extenders from the jewelry findings area of the bead store. Work really well for using a dressier version, but the mask elastic works just fine as well. Let's get in here. So in the software, you'll see there's that top little area. I'm going to blow it up a little bit. That is a loop so that you have a place to insert the chain or the jump ring or the elastic. There is the fill stitch, which goes from the top to the bottom. If you're in Stitch Artist Level 3, you can see that the pattern is a freestanding double mesh. The density is set at 1 millimeter, which means the stitches are 1 millimeter apart, which means that it's a nice dense weave, and it is pretty solid. It will hold lettering, it will hold shapes, it will hold motifs, it will hold single stitching, it will hold double stitching, satin stitching. It will hold a lot of things, and I've kind of pushed it to see what exactly it would hold. It can hold a lot. So I love this. The design itself is about a 1/2 inch wide. It's The 7-inch one is almost 7 inches long, but we can't get 7 inches long in the hoop with those little edges that we needed. So it's almost 7 inches long. But functionally, it's a 7-inch size, so it's in that 5x7 hoop. And this looks great as it is, but let's customize this some, and this is where it's really fun. So in order to customize it, we need to think if we want just a run of stitches down the center, or if we'd like the center to be filled with an overlay that kind of gives it a little bit of texture. On this one with all the different ones that I showed here, the motif samples, I've got some different shapes that I filled these with. I started with the one in the center, and I just have a single line of a motif run going down the middle. And that motif is composed of 2 different motifs that are found in Stitch Artist. And I have simply alternated them, and I've adjusted the size until I get them just like I want in this design. And so the design is really nice because it stitches out the background and the border, and then the motif is simply stitched on top of this. This looks really, really lovely. It's very delicate and light, and it's a very quick stitch. That whole design has 7,726 stitches, so it can be done in under 10 minutes. The next way I filled this with a motif is I copied the whole outline, the satin border that goes around, made a duplicate of that shape, and applied a motif fill to that area instead of a motif run. Let's look and see what that looks like. So I've got the top, the lace, the bottom loop, and then I've got this area called motif fill. You can see that it occupies the same space as the satin border, but it is a whole fill of these circles. And so this is actually really, really fun. You can see how big they are. They're not huge, but they're just fun. This is a 1/2 inch across, and it's just fun. It's lots of bubbles and circles, and so you could do all kinds of things. You could put these circles there, and then you could fill those circles with rhinestones or hot fix crystals. You could dab little tiny dots of glitter glue. The Stickles kind of glitter glue is really nice, and it's very durable. There's all kinds of things that you could do with dots or spots like this in this motif fill. Again, you can see that it's a little bit bigger than the motifs come in. I have it adjusted so it's 5.3 millimeters tall and 5.1 millimeters wide. I just played with the settings until I got the shape right so that I liked the way it looked on the screen, and then I'll take it to the machine and stitch it out and see what happens. But again, this whole version right here, the second instance of it, is still very quick to stitch. It's got 10,588 stitches, which is not a lot at all, and it'll stitch in just under 12-15 minutes. So that's just really fun. That's just one of the ways that we could do it. So let's go over to our empty one, and let's add some of those motifs that we could do to it. So the first thing I want to do is let's add the straight line motif down the middle. I want to show you how to do that. So what we need to do is we need to double check where our starts and stops are. You can see that the lace starts at the top and finishes at the bottom. Then there's that bottom loop, which also finishes at the bottom. The lace and the loops should be all one step. You could change the colors of that to meet your needs if you'd like, but if you do that and your machine doesn't cut stitches, there might be a jump stitch that you need to trim. So check your settings. Some of that is a setting on the machine. Some of that you can control in your software. So that's our background, and I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not doing anything to the satin borders for the loops or the lace background. I am going to take this satin border stitch and make sure that I know where it's going to start at. And the reason I need to know where it's going to start at is because that helps me think about where I want my motif to start or end at, depending on when it's going to stitch. If I'm going to stitch a motif down the center line and I just want it to be on top of everything after everything is done, then where the starting point is, I don't want it to have to jump, my machine to jump from one point in the stitching far away to another. And so I just like to think about this. For this bracelet, it doesn't really have a top or bottom or a left or a right. That's up to you. But I'm going to choose where I start my motif based on where the border ends. Okay, just so that my machine doesn't have to travel, move the head or move the needle or move the pantograph far, so that I don't have an issue of maybe it's going to get caught on something. So that's just something to think about when you're choosing where your machine's going to start and stop. So in order to get a single motif line, I need to draw a line. And I'm going to do that by grabbing my Draw with Points tool. And I'm going to start with my finger on the Control button on my keyboard. And I'm going to click and add a dot at the top near where that border stopped. And then I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and add another dot. And now I have a line that is straight going roughly down the center of my bracelet. I'm going to click with my right mouse key over on my mouse to end that line and set it in the software. Now you can see I've got a red line here that's last. It's position number 1.5 in my object window. And now I'm ready to add some motifs to that line. I add motifs by going into the stitch settings at the top toolbar and choosing the Motif Run tool from the stitch types. And I'm going to click that Motif Run, and it's going to come with the last motif that I was working with, another design where I was adding stars to a run. So the stars came up first. There's all kinds of motifs in here. I happen to be working with big stars, and these happen to go into a gradient from smallest to largest, which is kind of neat. But that's not what I want for this bracelet. So I'm going to adjust this. The first thing I'm going to do is delete that star motif. And now I have a fresh place to start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click plus by the motif in the properties window to bring up all of the motifs that I've stored in my computer. So some of these come with Embrilliance, some are extras, some are ones that I've created. So if you like creating motifs, that is something you can do in Stitch Artist Level 3, and you can publish it to the software so that you can use it for all kinds of things. I like to do that a lot. The motif that I'm thinking about here, I'm thinking about something that's a little bit more open, and it might be in the satin motifs. It might be in the cross stitch motif. There's all kinds of things that you can choose from. And what I suggest you do is you really just click around in here and play and see what's available to you in your software. Maybe you have another program that does motifs and it does it the same way. I happen to love these motifs that are in Stitch Artist because there is no end to what we can do with them. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. I'm simply going to select one and let's say, okay, I'm going to add this cross stitch motif. And I have a lovely line of cross stitches, which appear to be growing. And I don't necessarily want them to be growing. So I'm going to set the scale to 0 over here so that they're all the same. My scale was set to increase by 8%. And I don't need that to happen on this. I just want them to all be the same all the way down the row. And now I have this neat little pattern running down the center of the bracelet. Now, one thing you need to know about the motifs that are these decorative stitches, they're all a single run. So it's a very light stitching, but you can play with the density of that by either adding another layer of motif run down it, or when you're making your own motif, maybe you want to make it so that it is larger and it has more steps. These were made so that you can use them very, very small or larger situations. And so in order to be small, they needed to be a single run, like a single stitch. And so that's how they're designed. So we'll talk about some things that you can do to make them thicker, but I think they're actually really lovely like this too. This would be a darling little design, especially it looks very picnicky and kind of old-fashioned, and I think that's very fun. And it's actually currently in style right now. So this is very 1970s boho kind of effects here. So in order to see this better, I think I'm going to change the color of this, and I'm going to change it to, let's change it to a brighter blue. And I do that by selecting the color chip over in my properties bar. And I'm going to give it, let's do this one, the slate blue. That looks really nice. Okay, so I've got a nice bright blue. And then I'm going to change my background so it's a little bit brighter than that gray. And let's make that, we'll take it all the way up and make it white. Now we've got some good contrast and we can really see what's going on here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see this motif shape. And you can see how it's a series of just single runs with a little X in the middle. So it looks kind of like a gingham pattern. This is a fun motif, and this would be super cute on your friendship bracelet. If you want to, you can click on the motif. You can make it bigger. You can make it wider, in this case means further apart from each, or wider from each other from where the line starts and stops. So it stretches them along the line. The height of them is the height of them as they go across the line. So it's the thickness of the line. So height in this case for this line that runs up and down is actually the width. So I'm going to adjust the width a little bit, and you can see how we can make those bigger so they stretch across the whole bracelet. There's no wrong answer to how you play with the motifs. You can even have two motifs that happen at the same time. Let's add another motif to this line of motifs as they're going down. I saw a heart, and I thought a heart might be cute, or maybe this flower. Yes, let's add the flower. So now what we have is kind of that cross-stitch type floral motif, then a more flowery looking flower, for lack of a better word. We got two different kinds of flowers going down this line. And when we do the stitch simulator, I'll show you what that looks like. So let's get through the lace part, and then we'll see our border. Okay, and then we're going to get to the motif. So there is one flower, two flowers, three flowers, four, and you can see how they kind of alternate. They do actually alternate between the cross stitch looking one and then the more floral one. And they do that all the way down the design. They don't have to be the same color as your border. You could have this a totally different third color if you'd like. So let's change that to red. And now you've got a white background, a blue border, and then a red floral motif. So you could do that lots of different ways. You can customize it for holidays or for school sports events. Just there's no end to it. So that is a run motif, and that's how you would create a single line of stitches all the way down. Let me show you a couple of other options in the motif. You can take that off. You could take this one off, and you could add some satin motifs, which are really fun. There's the satin and satin-ish collection in the motifs. So I'm going to go into the satin-ish collection, and I'm going to pick these dots because those dots are fun. Kind of looks like beads, which is a neat effect. If you're trying to get a beaded effect, you can have these satinish dots, and you can play with the height and the width of them and make them look more like dots and more like beads, and they could be taller and fatter, however you'd like them to be. Okay, so we have some dots on the screen, and let's blow it up so you can see these dots. You can take the dots and you can make them fatter. So when you zoom out at about 100%, you know, this is kind of what you get. You can beef up the, no, you actually can't do anything. You can beef up the width of them and make them, you know, wider to each other so they look like long beads. You could use a variegated thread, and you can kind of estimate that, you know, with one of these has a variegated one. Oh, it's the Brother threads. Let's see, Brother embroidery. Down at the bottom of that, they've got some variegated. So you could, you know, just to see what different color combinations might look like. That's not a true representation of a variegated. It'd have a lot more color changes in it. You can't really see them that well on this, but you can get the idea that it does different things, and you know, you could have different colors. You could have a series of short motifs where you had a few in one color, so you could have, it looks like two beads. You can copy and paste that, make this one a different color, and we're going to give that a different color. So let's go back to my, I use Isacord just because they have lots of colors. So you could have this first one in, let's go back to Isacord. You know, you could do this as a, you know, message, or, you know, like a Morse code, that's the word, where you have different colors or different size beads. So that would be a fun way to get some motifs. I'd copy both of these and paste them, and now I can have, you know, lots of beads on there. And so that's a cute look too. There's really, like, you could have, these could be the short beads. You could find out what the letters are in each little set of motifs, could be your short beads. Let's see, let's make those short beads. So you've got dot, dot, dash, dash. That would be kind of fun. I don't know what those mean. That means something, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, that's just how you can play with those motif beads. Let's delete all of these because we don't need them. And let's go back to a long line and let's play with some other kinds of motifs. If you have built some motifs, you could use those too. I've built a motif called paw prints. And in the paw prints motif, I'm going to delete this one. It's saved under my, whoops, paw prints. I've saved it on here and I can make it smaller. So I have lots of paw prints, fat paw prints, skinny paw prints. I could even alternate some of them, or I could rotate all of them so that they're tilted one way or another. If I wanted to have them where they were alternating, I would add another motif and I would add it again. And I would take that one and I would flip it so that it's going, let's see, which way would I do? There. So it's going back and forth. So now I have these dog paw prints running down motif. Let's make that darker so we can see it. And you can see I've got a little dog paw print and a big paw print. And the big ones, which are the second ones, I want to make a little bit smaller. So you can see I made them quite a bit smaller now. So there's the one facing this way and one facing that way. So I've got big paws and little paws. You know, you could do that. You could do that with hearts as well. I know there's a heart over here on the cross stitch motif. Let's get that heart. And now we have, I'm going to delete the big little one. And I'm going to delete that one. And let's add another heart. Okay, so there's the heart again. And I'm going to take the second one and flip it. So now our hearts go back and forth, and that's super cute too. Now keep in mind, I think I told you that the motifs are they're meant to be a single run stitch. So in order for you to have a thicker font, you'd either need to digitize your own motif thicker, or what you can do is you could make a copy of this line. So copy and then paste it. So now you have two runs of the same motif right on top of each other. What happens though is that after the first one gets done, it's going to start at the top and end on the bottom. And because the motifs always run left to right, just like English writing does, the second motif is going to jump back to the beginning of that line and start at the top and go down to the bottom again. If your motif is not very complex, you can adjust the start and stop. So if it's ended at the first motif ended at the bottom, you want the second motif to start at the bottom and go to the top. You would need to reverse the points. So you do create, outline, reverse points. And depending on how you set your motif, it might line up just right, like one on top of the other. And then you've got a double stitch, which actually looks really, really nice on top of this freestanding lace bracelet fill. But if your motif is ever so slightly off, and you can see right here, it is just not quite lined up. I can see kind of where those are overlapping a little bit. You can see it's not exactly in the same place, and maybe that helps the effect to give it a little bit more thickness that you want, or maybe it doesn't. So it's just something that you can play with. Okay, so that's how to make a line of motif shapes or little decorative features. Just one single line of them, go all the way down. And you can add as many here as you'd like to in these, you know, add the motifs to your heart's content. If you wanted to add, I don't know how many you could do. Let's see. I've got two there. Let's add another one. And we're going to delete. Let's see. Let's delete that one. So we'll have a bunch of different ones. One, that's two. Let's add one more. Let's add this one, 3, 4. Okay. So we've got a bunch of motifs, 5. See, now we've got a bunch of things going on there. And I don't know that I would do that, but I'm just seeing how many you could add. Let's add that little flower guy in there. Let's add this window, and let's go into the satin ones, and let's add some satin stuff. Maybe this lip, it looks like a top lip to me. So you can see you can put quite a few motifs in there, so they just run in their pattern. Maybe you're doing secret codes with your kids, and you have little shapes for the secret code letters, and so that would be a fun thing to do too. Okay. Anyway, you can make a whole bunch of things with motifs. Let's add lettering, because lettering is super fun to add to these. To add lettering, you're going to need letters that are going to fit inside the border. You don't really want them up underneath the border. You don't want them to go over the border. You've got about a 1/2 inch to play with. But you also have, since you have the BE file, you could make this a little bit fatter. The tolerance of how wide your bracelet can be really depends on how well you've hooped your stabilizer and how much time you have to give to this project. So if you have all day and you want to stitch a full piece of lace out, knock yourself out. I'm making these because this is faster than actually weaving it with a safety pin and embroidery floss pinned to my knee, like we did when we were teenagers. So we've got big embroidery machines, so let's stitch fast and not break things, right? I'm doing this because it's a lot faster than what I would ordinarily be able to do by hand. So I'm going to add some letters, and I'm just going to use a font that's a 1/2 inch or less, so it fits in this little bracelet size. In Embrilliance, it comes with the basic block font, and I'm going to work with that right now because that's what comes up. And if you don't have any other fonts in your font collection, you've got that one because you've got Embrilliance Essentials. And then with Stitch Artist, you know, we can manipulate things inside the font to do it, make it do what we want to. I'm going to take this font and I'm going to rotate it. So I'm not in create mode right now, but I'm going to rotate it so it's going to stitch across the bracelet so that my letters line up. I'm going to squeeze it a little bit so that it fits in my border. And then just to make sure my letters aren't too much out of shape, I'm kind of just squeezing them just a little bit so they look like regular letters. They're not skewed or stretched out weird or anything. And let's put something in here. Let's put I'm going to put one of my kids' names on here. And just to show you all the letters that you could use, let's use her middle name too. So I'm going to put Abigail Ann on there. You do want to take care, you know, your ascenders and descenders affect how wide of space you've got on your font. So you might want to use an all capital font, or you just might want to play with your letters until they fit in the border. And you can see that on your screen. I'm not zoomed in super close. I've got it at 110%. So this, I can just eyeball it. Now, one of the things that I do a lot of the time is I think about my letters, what I'm stitching them on, and what kind of underlay my letters need. So since this is on one of these freestanding lace bracelets, there's already a good structure of support for the stitches because the bracelet is actually stitches. So we've made our own fabric. We're just going to apply some lettering. This lettering has a good underlay in it, but I can adjust it in the stitch properties inside the software. So I could fill each of the letters with a certain fill pattern. It's set to autofill to the tatami fill, which is a nice flat fill. I generally will set it to none if I want a true satin stitch look to the letters. And so I've changed it to none. The automatic density at 4.5 is good on this bracelet because I've tested it. But if you want more, you know, more heft to your letters, or if you're using if you're stitching on a black bracelet and you're using a white thread, and some of your white threads are not as dense, or they're more sheer than other white threads, you may want to have more density to your thread. That is something to consider. So all of this requires you to experiment with what you have with your materials, your machine, your stabilizer. This is your recipe that you're basically creating here. I know based on the experiments that I've done in my sewing room that the thread that I use, I've gone through a lot of white threads to find what I like. And I like Isacord, it's number 1101 or 10010 is the color of it. It's a nice white. It's not shiny. It doesn't have much of a sheen to it because Isacord in general is not very shiny. It's kind of a semi-gloss if you're comparing it to paint on the wall. But it is not as translucent as some other brands of thread that I have used before. And so I like the way it covers. So I will use that Isacord thread for my white before I would use another brand if I'm doing it, especially on a dark color, and I want the white to show up as white. So all that to say is that you need to know what materials you're using, what threads you're using, so that you kind of know what settings you need on your fonts that you're putting on here. I can see right here that it comes automatically with the edge run and the satin underlay, which I do like. It gives it a little bit of height, a little bit of depth, and a little bit of extra shine when you have a shiny thread. You may not want that height for your letters, and you might want them flatter. And so in that case, you would take out the satin underlay and maybe, work on a little bit more. Maybe you want a pattern in the letters. Maybe you want them to have this neat cornrow texture, which honestly doesn't show up on this small, but on bigger letters, it would show up quite a bit. So I'm just going to leave that at none from now, but do play with those settings because there's lots of fun things that are kind of surprising sometimes. And I encourage everybody to play with your software. You're not going to break anything or hurt anything. Just remember to save your work and you'll be good. Okay, so we've added some letters. I can change them to the color that I want. And so let's do that. Let's change them to the color. Let's make those, let's go up to one of this bright pink. And I could also change my border so that it matches. And, that's 3 different colors. Because these letters don't really go over the border, I want to scooch them in just a little bit so that they're not on top of the border to cause any extra thickness in the stitches. Oh, that looks actually really nice. I can do that. And I could either make these 2 the exact same color so they just keep stitching, or I could have them 2 separate colors. It's your choice. If you need to, you can move the letters, before the border so they stitch before. If you want a little bit of the lettering to be caught on the edge, let's pick a different font, maybe something from Designs by Juju. They have some 1/2 inch fonts. Let me see if I can find one. 1/2 inch. Sometimes you can take a 3/4 inch font and scooch it down. Here's one called Adorn. This one's nice because it's a 1/2 inch font and it's in the BX format and it comes in really well. Sometimes they're not quite on the line, so you may have to adjust individual letters. Like I can see here, this B is not quite in line. It could be the B's not in line, or maybe it's just that the I and the A are not in line. So you might want to scooch those up. Some of that may have to do with the way it was digitized. There's no telling. If you didn't design the font, then, you get what you get. So that looks good. That's a nice font because it's all capital letters, and I can put that in there and I can see the whole thing. These are also good. If you need to make something for your kids, if y'all are going to like a theme park or something, and you just need to put an ID bracelet on your kids so that if they get lost, somebody could call you and let you know they know where your kids are. This would be a good place to put your phone number or something else, maybe just some kind of identifier so that your kids have some sort of ID on them. I know when I had little kids, I was always worried about losing one somewhere and how would they know. Anyway, all of the things, but you could do that too. So you could add your phone number, you could add anything you wanted to here. You could make these if you're making how when you have a litter of puppies and they need a collar to identify because there's so many puppies and they all look the same. These actually make really great little whelping collars. And so you could put, a name on each one and then you could have them so they're either tied on. A lot of times those breeders will use a ribbon or some other kind of adjustable little thing. This very soft mask elastic would be a real simple way to put an ID on those puppies. So, this is a good use for that. So you've got some letters in here, any letter, any 1/2 inch font. If you adjust the size of your bracelet, you can get a little bit more room in there, but that's just a nice way to do that. You could also write anything else. Maybe you want to put an encouraging word on here. Maybe you want to make a little bracelet for your kids that says like something that they say all the time, or you just want them to let them know that you're thinking of them. You could put I love you forever. Something you can be cheesy or sweet. You could add, you could add the name of your organization or your group. So perhaps you're in Scout troop number 45. You could add troop number, and that would be a neat little gift or giveaway for your, oops, let's see, let's write 45 correctly. But that might be a nice little gift for your group. And, you know, like I say, you can play with the fonts to see, you know, based on what you already have, what might look good and what you like best. That one's a 1/2-inch font, but it's way too big for that area. So, you know, sometimes you just got to play with it. I know that Jolson has some nice little bitty fonts. And so maybe you want to use one of Jolson's fonts. That's actually a really nice one. Look how tiny that is. That's a 1/4-inch font, but you could put that on there. You could put the year on that would be kind of cool. So 2024, say you're doing a high school, and you could put like seniors, you know, this would be fun. You could do them for an event that y'all are having. No end to it. There's no end to it. No end to it at all. Okay, so let's give these a little bit different color just so we can see. So if you did it in school colors, you could see how you could personalize the whole thing and make it for the school colors, for the group colors, for the event, for the kids' favorite colors. There's so many options here. Let me show you how to fill this design with a motif as well. So let's stop doing letters. We filled it with a motif that went from top to bottom, but now let's fill the whole shape with a motif. So in the examples that I showed you before, we've got all different kinds here. We've got this one with the bubbles. These kind of look like agave plants. These look like dragon scales. I'm really excited about that one. And then I filled this one with stars for 4th of July, but let's see what we can do over here is to make this whole shape filled with a motif. Okay, so now I'm back to, this is the one we were working on, and I've got the background, and I've got the outline. And what I need to do is I need to make a copy of the outline. So I'm going to go into create mode, make sure I'm in create mode so I get all of my drawing, stitching, and pathing tools. And I'm going to make a copy of that outline. So I'm going to copy, then paste it. Now I have 2 outlines. And the one that's first is the one that I want to fill with the motif. So now I'm going to go up here. I have got lots of different patterns. I can fill it with a fill stitch. I could fill it with a column stitch, which would be the whole thing is a satin, which might be kind of a mess right here on this part. We can fill it with a quilt stipple, which is kind of neat and quilty. I can fill it with a motif. And so here's the stars from the last one I was playing with. And simply a motif fill is the same idea as the line fill, except for your motifs are going to be in the whole shape and not just down a line. So this isn't just one line of little stars. This is a whole shape filled with little stars. It's kind of like the difference between filling a skewer. If you think about a skewer and you're putting shish kebabs on and you're putting one on at a time, or filling the whole bowl with all of the pieces that you cut for your shish kebab instead of putting them all in line. They're in rows and they're, you know, they're either straight and lined up with each other in rows and columns, or they're staggered a little bit like these are here. I'll show you how to do that. So in this motif, I've picked from the same motif area. You know, I've got all these little options, and I've picked a motif. So let's actually go to the satin-ish ones, and let's pick the let's see, let's pick one of those dots. We were working with satin dot number 5, satin-ish dot, and let's take our star out, and you can see right here that this fills it with those beads. So those dots that look like beads, they're not really beads. And because the motif is going left to right, it's going to start at the bottom and go to the top. Whatever, that's fine. It's actually rows of these little dots. And when I do the play stitch simulator, you will see how it starts. So we've got our whole thing, and it starts at the bottom, and it just goes back and forth and winds those beads all the way through up at the top. Now there's a gap between each row, so it's not a solid fill. It's just filled in with the beads. This would be nice for a cool stripe effect. Then there's our outline. But let's see what else we can do with these beads. Okay, so these are the little dots. Right now they're 2 millimeters wide and 2 millimeters tall. Let's make them a little bit bigger. Ooh, I filled the whole thing. Now they're 5.9 millimeters wide, high, and 2 millimeters tall. That's really fun. And they're kind of set in rows, so they're very regular, one right on top of the other, 2 columns. If I toggle this button here over here in the properties window, I can make the rows, instead of being on top of each other in rows and columns, even columns, kind of like a grid, now they will nestle with each other. So now I have, instead of 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, I've got 2, 2.5 with one split, you know, one's in the middle and 2 splits on the edge. So it's almost like when you're putting biscuits in a pan or cookies on a cookie sheet, you kind of stagger the rows a little bit so you can get more on there. And so that's essentially what I've done here. I have filled the space so that instead of it's going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 regularly all the way up, it goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So there's more area is covered. So there's essentially more real estate covered by these shapes because they nest together better. And you know, you can adjust as you want the size of them. Those are great big height, and you can see how you can just change that and alter it a little bit. There's really lots and lots of fun things that you can do with these motif shapes. And let's change the color a little bitty bit so we can see it just a bit better. Sometimes it's hard to quite see. There we go. We have a lighter one. You can kind of see what it's doing. This motif doesn't have a, you know, super underlay on it. So it's just going to stitch the bead and then go to the next one. But it's going to go, you know, back and forth across the bracelet from the bottom to the top, just like it's filling up a little tube of paint. And I think that's really fun. So again, you could play with all kinds of motifs in here. This is really neat. I just added that line with a dot in it. Now we've got something that looks kind of like a tile floor. I think it'd be fun to change the color on that. Let's change the color on that so we can really see that. So I'm thinking of a tile floor. I'm thinking of something kind of gray. See, I mean, that just gives you a neat pattern on it. So we've got our base of the freestanding lace, and then you've got a pattern that looks really interesting. And there are lots and lots and lots of these motifs. And when you play with their shape, you get all kinds of different effects. Maybe you want to do one of these squared off motifs. Let's add one of those on there. And so I've got it, and it looks kind of like a heartbeat a little bit. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, or maybe a southwestern design. And so that's just really neat. They kind of nest in here. I can make them, now they're in regular rows. You can see that each row is identical to the top. If I stagger it by picking this button over here, it will force a stagger. It brings them a little bit closer together so they nest in with each other, and that's really fun too. So that's a way you can fill the shape with the motif. Let's find another one and see if we can find something else that's interesting. These all these motifs in here are really, really neat. This one's a really nice one. You can see when you combine them, you can get some wacky designs. Some are kind of crazy and some are kind of fun. So that looks like a bunch of neat zigzags. It's just a lot of fun to play with, and I encourage you to play. This is a nice one. I love that little squared ball. Doesn't that look neat? I mean, that's a really fun look too. So, you know, based on the theme that you're doing, you can even have a motif underneath the lettering that you add to. That is something else you could do. So anyway, play with this design. It's super fun. There's a lot of versatile things you can do to it. You could even create, I did this for one version, but I'm going to copy and paste again. You could even create another border underneath that is a little lace effect. Let me show you how I did that. So I've got two borders, right? I don't really need two borders, but one of them I'm going to change. Instead of it being a satin border, a freestanding lace border to hold the whole thing together, I'm going to set a motif run on that so that I get some little fluffs on the edge that kind of fluff out and look cool. So I don't want to use these open motifs from the last time. I really want something that's more satinish. So let's delete all these guys. Sorry, y'all are going away. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Whoops. Let's get rid of all these guys first. Okay. And now I left that last one on because it was satin-ish. And it was satin number 8, and it kind of has like a little, we zoom in real quick, it looks like your top lip, you know, if you're drawing somebody's top lips. So it's a little bit like a double scallop. If I wanted a different one there, I might pick a different motif that didn't have that double scallop. Let's look over here. I might pick this one. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go pick that one, the satin one that looks like this, and delete the one with the lip top. And now I have a neat ruffle border that kind of looks like you put zigzags in it, or rickrack. That's the stuff. And I might make it a little bit, oops, let's make it a little bit smaller, so you've got a more delicate little rickrack. But that would be fun. It just has those little bumps peeking out of the edge. So look how that looks right there. And all I did was copy the motif, or copy the border, and put this Motif Run underneath the border. Now, because my motif goes all the way around, I need to note where the start and stops were, which probably, because it's not an open shape, I'd need to open it so I convert it to curve and I can see where it starts and stops. It starts and stops right here. So now I need to think about where my last satin border is going to go around and start and stop as well. So I don't need it to start down here and end up there. I want it to start where the motif ended so that it's not going to go jump down to the next spot. It doesn't have to be the same color as that motif border that's underneath it, but it can. And then it runs all at once and then it's done. You definitely do want the motif border to be under that satin border so that it holds everything together. That satin border is really the glue that holds this freestanding lace piece together. You've got your background, which is nice, but without that satin stitch border around the whole thing, you really don't have much to keep it all together, especially now that you've added that motif run around the border as well. So, and like all the other ones, you could add other kinds of satin or satin-ish motifs to that. I would not add any of the cross-stitch motifs. Some of the other open ones, and I just know this because I played with them, you could add, let's see, there was one I played with one time and I did it and it looked like feathers coming off. Kind of like a fringe, but not really a fringe. It wasn't that one. I don't think it was. Let's move that out. So that one would kind of be fun, although you can see how that ends up on the middle and on the outside. So that's kind of neat. I don't know if that, you know, it just depends on the look you're going for. So that might be kind of fun. You know, you'd have little hairs sticking out. And when you wash away your stabilizer, you're going to have those little fluffs there. One side's going to get caught on the lace, the part in the middle. And then the outside edge is going to be loose. And yeah, that'd actually be fine. Let me look real close. So it's got a stitch here and it stitches here. I need to turn off the, so it's one stitch, one stitch, one stitch, one stitch, one stitch. So it's 4. Each one is 4. So when I look at it, not that way. Let's do this. Let's turn off the 3D. There we go. Now we can see it really well. I can see that it's one stitch, one stitch, one stitch, one stitch. So as long as this stitch down here is caught underneath that final satin border, you'd be okay. But you need to know where is it going to get caught? Is there enough of the stitch that's going to be held down by the satin border? So that is something to keep in mind as you play with choosing motifs for there. Okay, let's pick one more and let's see if we can see what's going to happen. That was this larger 24 one down here. Let's see. Let's try one of these decorative ones. I think this is one of the ones that I had used before. Let's delete that. Yeah, I believe it was. Let's turn 3D on so you can see what we've got here and see how you just have a few little doodads peeking out underneath. If you wanted to make it fatter, you could do that. And then you would see some on the inside and a little bit more on the outside. And that gives you kind of a feathery fluff, but it's not so much like a rickrack piece. You just have some little points sticking out. So that kind of almost looks like tatting. When you zoom out and stitch it out, that's probably going to look a little bit like tatting, where you leave those little, I'm not sure what the technical term is for those loops, but that's kind of what's going to happen there a little bit. You could have something that's a little bit more open and rounded there. Let's do that. So you've got this one here, and that's still going to leave a little feathery effect, but you can change the rotation of these motifs as well. So if you change this one 45 degrees or even 90 degrees, you can see where that is. See how the ends are pointing out? You could flip them so that the ends are all pointing in. There we go. And now we've got those bumps on the outside and those ridges on the inside. And you could even make them further apart so they have more of a gap between them. You could make them bigger. So see how they, you know, that would be kind of neat. So that's going to hold together because the still that satin border that we originally had is holding that stuff down. So that edge is going to be loose a little bit, but it's still incorporated underneath the satin border, so it's holding it down. So this is something you just need to experiment and see what happens, see if you like it. And the nice thing about these designs is what I've been doing is really trying to push the limits to see how much I could break this technique. And with this border and this background, I haven't been able to break it since I got it, the settings on this one correctly. If you would like to alter the settings or adjust them in some way, you have the BE file and you can totally do that with the mod bracelet, but you don't have to. You can leave it just the same and then add your overlays on the border or in the motif or in the lettering or whatever. But just have fun with it and don't be afraid to play. If something happens and you break the BE file, and you can always go back to the website and download a fresh copy of it. Just be sure that as you're adding things to your copy of it, you save it and give it a new name so that you know what you called it. Save it. You can save it all in the same folder you downloaded it from, and that way you can keep them all together, but give it a new name every time you add a new little something to it, especially if it's something you like. Go ahead and save it right there before you take it to your machine. That way you can at least get back to it in case something happens to your computer. Let me know if you have any questions. Have fun playing with these friendship bracelets. I think they're really fun. They've been very popular and a lot of fun every time I've taken them out in public. And it's been a treat to see how people are using their thread collection and how they're customizing and adding crystals and all kinds of things, charms. There's no end to the fun here. So enjoy making these and then make them to share and celebrate the things that are going in your life, in your family's life, and in your friends' lives. And maybe they'll become something that's an integral part of your small business and that you make these for customers and clients as well. And I hope that's something that happens for you. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me in the Designs by Baby Moon Friends and Fans group on Facebook, as well as just generally on Facebook as Designs by Baby Moon, or on Instagram as Designs by Baby Moon, or simply send me an email to info@designsbybabymoon.com. I'd be happy to help in any way I can. And I really think you're going to have a lot of fun with this design, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. So thanks for watching. Y'all take care, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.